In the tragic sinking of the Titanic disaster, famous passengers and notable figures lost their lives, turning one voyage into a haunting legend remembered forever. Hamish Harding was a British entrepreneur, pilot, and explorer born on June 24, 1964 in England. He was the chairman of Action Aviation, a global aircraft brokerage company, and was known for his passion for extreme exploration, including aviation, space, tourism, and deep-sea expeditions. Harding held multiple world records for endurance and adventure flights, including journeys over the South Pole and participation in space tourism with Blue Origin. In June 2023, he joined the OceanGate Titan submersible expedition to explore the wreck of the Titanic in the North Atlantic Ocean. On June 18, 2023, the submersible suffered a catastrophic implosion at extreme depth, killing him and all other passengers instantly. His death shocked the world and highlighted the risks of experimental deep ocean exploration. Stockton Rush was an American aerospace engineer and entrepreneur born on March 31, 1962 in San Francisco, California. He studied aerospace engineering at Princeton University and later earned an MBA, building a career that combined engineering and business leadership. In 2009, he founded OceanGate, a company focused on deep-sea exploration and private submersible tourism, aiming to make the ocean depths more accessible. He became widely known for developing the Titan submersible, designed to reach extreme depths, including dives to the Titanic wreck site. On June 18, 2023, during an expedition to the Titanic wreck in the North Atlantic Ocean, the Titan suffered a catastrophic implosion at great depth, killing Rush and all on board instantly. His death raised major global discussions about deep-sea exploration, safety, experimental engineering risks, and regulations in private underwater tourism. Paul-Henri Nargeolet was a French naval officer, submarine pilot, and deep-sea explorer. Born on March 2, 1946 in Chamonix, France, he served in the French Navy for many years, specializing in underwater rescue and submarine operations, and later worked with the French Institute for Ocean Science, where he became a leading authority on the wreck of the Titanic. Over his career, he participated in numerous deep-sea missions and helped recover artifacts from the Titanic site, earning the nickname Mr. Titanic. In June 2023, he joined the OceanGate Titan submersible expedition to explore the Titanic wreck in the North Atlantic Ocean. On June 18, 2023, the Titan suffered a catastrophic implosion at extreme depth, killing Nargeolet and all on board instantly. His death was widely mourned in the ocean exploration community due to his decades of expertise and dedication to underwater research. Shahzada Dawood was a Pakistani businessman and investor born on February 12, 1975. He was a member of the influential Dawood family and served as vice chairman of Engro Corporation, one of Pakistan's major business groups involved in energy, agriculture, and chemicals. He also worked with the Dawood Foundation, supporting education, science, and community development projects. Known for his interest in innovation and exploration, he often encouraged learning experiences for his family. In June 2023, he joined the OceanGate Titan submersible expedition with his son, Suleiman Dawood, to visit the wreck of the Titanic in the North Atlantic Ocean. On June 18, 2023, the Titan suffered a catastrophic implosion at extreme depth, killing Shahzada Dawood and all passengers instantly. His death, along with his son's, was widely mourned in Pakistan and internationally, highlighting both the risks of deep-sea exploration and the human loss involved. Suleiman Dawood was a Pakistani-British student born on May 28, 2004 in Pakistan. He was the son of businessman Shahzada Dawood and belonged to one of Pakistan's well-known business families. At the time of his death, he had completed his early education and was preparing to begin studies at the University of Strathclyde in Scotland, showing interest in business and innovation like his family. In June 2023, he joined his father on the OceanGate Titan submersible expedition to visit the wreck of the Titanic in the North Atlantic Ocean. On June 18, 2023, the Titan suffered a catastrophic implosion at extreme depth, killing Suleiman Dawood and all other passengers instantly. His death at just 19 years old was widely mourned and especially deeply felt in Pakistan, where he was remembered as a young student with a promising future. Victor Giglio was a young Italian valet who served as a personal attendant to wealthy American businessman Benjamin Guggenheim aboard the RMS Titanic disaster. During the ship's maiden voyage in April 1912, Giglio was part of the first-class service staff traveling across the North Atlantic from Southampton to New York. On the night of 14th April, 1912, after the Titanic struck an iceberg and began to sink, Guggenheim and his valet reportedly changed into formal evening clothes, showing calm acceptance of their fate. Giglio remained with Guggenheim as the situation became hopeless, and both men perished when the ship broke apart and sank in the early hours of 15 April 1912. He was only in his early 20s at the time of his death. His story is remembered as part of the many loyal servants and staff who died alongside their employers in one of history's most famous maritime disasters. Henry B. Harris was a well-known American Broadway theatrical producer and manager who died in the RMS Titanic disaster. In April 1912, he and his wife Irene boarded the Titanic in Southampton as first-class passengers after returning from Europe. Harris was an influential figure in New York, theater owning and producing many successful stage plays, and he was returning home to continue his career. On the night of 14th-15th April 1912, when the Titanic struck an iceberg and began sinking, he helped his wife onto a lifeboat, reportedly ensuring her escape. After that, he was not seen again, and went down with the ship in the freezing North Atlantic waters. His body was never recovered. Henry B. Harris was among the prominent American figures who perished in the disaster, remembered for both his contributions to theater and his final act of securing his wife's survival. Robert Williams was a passenger aboard the RMS Titanic disaster during its maiden voyage in April 1912. He was among the many travelers crossing the Atlantic from Europe to the United States when the ship struck an iceberg late on the night of 14th April 1912. As the Titanic began to flood and sink in the icy North Atlantic, passengers were rushed into lifeboats under chaotic conditions, but there were not enough for everyone on board. Robert Williams was among those who did not survive the disaster and died when the ship went down in the early hours of 15 April 1912. Like many third-class or less documented passengers, detailed personal records about his life and final moments are limited, but his name is included among the victims of one of history's most tragic maritime disasters, which claimed more than 1,500 lives and changed international maritime safety laws forever. Archibald Butt was a prominent American military officer and journalist who died in the RMS Titanic disaster in April 1912. He served as a U.S. Army major and was a trusted aide to both President Theodore Roosevelt and President William Howard Taft, earning respect for his professionalism and diplomacy. In 1912, Butt was returning to the United States after a diplomatic trip to Europe when he boarded the Titanic as a first-class passenger alongside artist Francis Davis Millet. On the night of 14th April 1912, when the Titanic struck an iceberg and began sinking, Butt reportedly helped women and children into lifeboats, maintaining calm under pressure. He did not survive the disaster and went down with the ship in the early hours of 15th April 1912. His death was widely mourned in the United States as he was considered a rising and respected public servant whose career was cut short in one of history's most famous maritime tragedies. Charles Melville Hayes was a prominent American-Canadian railway executive who died in the RMS Titanic disaster. He was the president of the Grand Trunk Railway and played a major role in expanding railway networks across Canada and North America. In April 1912, Hayes was returning from Europe to attend meetings and travel back to Canada when he boarded the Titanic with his wife, daughter, and son-in-law. On the night of 14th April 1912, after the ship struck an iceberg and began to sink, Hayes's family was evacuated into lifeboats, but he remained aboard the vessel. He ultimately did not survive and went down with the ship in the early hours of 15th April 1912. His body was later recovered from the Atlantic. His death was a major loss to the railway industry as he was considered one of the most influential transportation leaders of his time, and his passing became one of the notable tragedies among the many lives lost in the Titanic disaster. John Borland Thayer was an American businessman and athlete who survived the RMS Titanic disaster. He was the son of John B. Thayer Sr., a wealthy railroad executive, and was traveling first class on the Titanic in April 1912 with his parents and his wife, Marion Longstreth Thayer. On the night of 14th April, 1912, when the ship struck an iceberg and began to sink, John Thayer became separated from his family during the evacuation. His mother and wife were later rescued in lifeboats, but his father died in the disaster. John Thayer himself survived by escaping the sinking ship, reportedly jumping into the freezing Atlantic waters and reaching an overturned, collapsible lifeboat where he eventually found safety. After the sinking in the early hours of 5th April 1912, he lived with the memory of the tragedy for the rest of his life. His survival story is often remembered as one of the dramatic accounts from the Titanic disaster, where some family members survived while others did not. Jacques Futrelle was an American journalist and mystery writer famous for creating the fictional detective Professor Augustus S.F.X. Van Dusen, also known as the Thinking Machine. He traveled aboard the RMS Titanic disaster in April 1912 with his wife May Futrelle after a trip to Europe promoting his writing career. On the night of 14th April 1912, when the Titanic struck an iceberg and began to sink, Futrelle ensured his wife was placed into a lifeboat, reportedly refusing to join her. Despite her pleas, he chose to remain on the ship, believing there was still time for rescue. Jacques Futrelle did not survive the disaster and died when the Titanic sank in the early hours of 5th April 1912 in the freezing North Atlantic. His body was never recovered. His wife survived and later shared his heroic final actions, making Futrelle one of the many passengers remembered for courage and self-sacrifice during the tragic sinking. William Thomas Stead was a famous British journalist, editor, and social reformer who died in the RMS Titanic disaster. He was one of the most influential newspaper editors of his time, known for investigative journalism and campaigns against social injustice, child exploitation, and war. In April 1912, Stead was traveling to the United States aboard the Titanic to attend a peace conference at the invitation of President William Howard Taft. On the night of 14 April 1912, when the ship struck an iceberg and began to sink, Stead reportedly assisted other passengers, helping women and children into lifeboats. As the situation worsened, he remained on board. He did not survive the disaster and died in the early hours of 5th April 1912, when the Titanic sank in the North Atlantic. His body was never recovered. Stead was widely mourned in Britain and is remembered not only for his journalism but also for his calm behavior and selflessness during the final moments of the Titanic tragedy. Wallace Hartley was an English violinist and the band leader of the RMS Titanic's 8-member orchestra aboard the RMS Titanic disaster. Born in 1878, he was a talented musician who had previously worked on other White Star Line ships before joining the Titanic in April 1912. On the night of 14th April 1912, after the Titanic struck an iceberg and began to sink, Hartley and his fellow musicians famously continued to play music on the deck to calm passengers during the evacuation. Their final performance reportedly took place as the ship was going down, and they did not stop playing, even as chaos increased. Wallace Hartley and all members of the orchestra perished when the Titanic sank in the early hours of 15 April 1912 in the North Atlantic. His body was later recovered and he was identified by the engraved violin case strapped to him. Hartley became a symbol of bravery and composure, remembered worldwide for his courage, and the musician's final act of comfort during one of history's greatest maritime disasters. If you like my video, then I can also provide you with video creation or other digital services. I am sharing a group link in the description below. Please feel free to contact me.